Thank you for listening to the Clive Barker Podcast. If you like our podcast, why not subscribe in your favorite podcast app so you never miss an episode? In episode 272, Ryan and Jose catch up, and we cover the Doug Bradley and Candyman news, as well as a Hellraiser remake rumor. This episode is sponsored by Dark Regions Press, a publisher and seller of great Clive Barker books, often rare and hard to find. If you look at the website today, darkregions.com, you can find Midnight Meat Train Definitive Edition and the Body Book. Click the link in the show notes to go to Dark Regions Press and pick up your copy if you missed out on one of these. Well, welcome. This is episode 272 of the Clive Barker Podcast. Good morning, Jose. Or actually, I guess it's noon over there, huh?
Yeah, it's 12 over here. I guess today we could say we're having a Doug Bradley extravaganza.
Yeah. Right.
I want to quickly just do something here. I just got Audible, Morningstar, The Vampires of Summer. That's a book by Peter Atkins that was put out by Encyclopocalypse, and I just bought it. So I have it set up here. I'm going to play just a little intro of Doug Bradley reading the first sentence of the book.
Imagine that I could hold in my hand as a book the heart that has ceased to throb. Should I not read there something which the world had never read during all the long years it dwelt in it?
So that's a heck of an opening, huh?
Wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got it on Audible also, but I haven't started listening to it yet.
All right, cool. So we're going to do some catching up today, talk about some news, some articles that came out, give our little impressions on it. How are you guys doing? You doing all right? Just let us know. I know it's kind of a hard times right now. We took some time off for family and just mental health break. It was really touch and go for a while. Some strange things happening. Some strange things happening in my life, but things have gotten better now. Have you been doing something fun lately, Ryan?
We had Joel's birthday party last weekend.
How cool!
Yeah. So,
did you guys go anywhere?
No, I mean, not really. There's a school across the street from us, so kids ran around and shot each other with squirt guns for his birthday. Yeah. We've got the neighbors are having a family wedding in their yard today, so that'll be interesting.
Oh, that sounds like there's going to be a lot of fun and music and a lot of people.
Yeah.
On the time of the pandemic, you'd imagine there wouldn't be any major parties like that, but
well, that's why they're doing it in their yard instead of and they're doing a small ceremony instead of like a whole bunch of people.
Still, imagine like a social distancing marriage. That's kind of a weird concept for a party, but I know it's like people are kind of having enough of this, and I guess if you know someone well enough and you know that they've been at home stuck. Probably it's going to be okay. Unfortunately, I'm in a state of Ohio right now, and it's been kind of weird. Like, there's been restaurants near us that had like servers come up with that COVID. Even our governor has now tested positive for COVID-19.
Wow.
But then they tested him again, and apparently it was a false positive. So we're not really sure what's going on.
Yeah.
But it's still weird, and still people showing up in supermarkets with no masks and filming themselves having meltdowns, and
yeah,
it's strange. So yeah, hope you guys are doing okay. Give us a message, give us a comment saying, hey, this is what I've been up to. This is the book I'm reading. Let us know how you deal with this stress of working from home. Like I find myself, you have to get out in your car every day. You have to drive dozens or hundreds of miles. I work from home right now for this company that I'm working, and it's really easy to you go out on Sunday to get some groceries, and then all of a sudden it's Friday, and you're figuring out, why am I so cranky? Why do I feel so bad? And it's like, oh, I haven't left the house, and it's Friday, and then last time I went out was on Sunday. And it's strange. And it is this a new normal? Is this normal? I don't know anymore what's normal. I just don't know what's going on. And you read books or try to read books, and then you find yourself like picking up your phone and reading the news, and you just get depressed and angry, and then you just decide, I'm gonna quit social media for a while, which I did. For about a week, I didn't touch Facebook, and I tried to stay away as much as possible. But we took some time off, but we're back now. We're back, and we got some news to catch up on.
Yeah, I for reading, I've been reading the Dragonlance novels because I never read those in their original run. I was always kind of like, I wouldn't read serial novels from I never read any. I really never read any Star Wars books except for one when I was a kid, and I just didn't have respect for authors that did that. So. But now I feel differently about it, so I wanted to give it a try. So I've started reading the Dragonlance novels, which are pretty good. I've read the first two already, on Audible, so I've been listening to them while I'm working.
That's cool. I remember vaguely that there was a comic book for Dragonlance. I think it was DC or something.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Was that the one that used to come, the ads in the back of comic books in the 90s? I'm probably thinking about something else.
I don't know.
It's probably like a different kind of. I think there was a VHS tape that came with it or something. I'm thinking about something else. Never mind. So Dragonlance, huh?
Yeah. They're,
Dungeons and Dragons.
Yep. Just a lot of Dungeons and Dragons stuff. Yeah, and then we've been preparing for some future episodes, which we'll talk about, when we get to the end. Yeah, if you want, we can jump into the news.
Sure thing. Yeah, let's jump into the news. There's stuff about Doug Bradley. Like I said, there's a Doug Bradley extravaganza today. Doug Bradley has been reading Frankenstein, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, right, on YouTube. He's been doing a reading of the novel and chapters, and now he's started. He decided to do the Edgar Allan Poe's Telltale Heart story, right?
Yeah, which is interesting. I want to listen to that at some point. When he's done. But yeah, it's a neat thing he's doing on YouTube, reading these classic books to help keep people entertained during the pandemic.
Yeah, well, it's a one shot, so it's just like he already finished it. He gave it a little introduction.
Yeah,
and then he starts the story, and it's basically just 28 minutes. Most of that is him talking about spine chillers and how he already read some stuff like The Outsider by H.P. Lovecraft at the time when they did that with Renegade Media. I think it was a guy called Tony Luke who Tony Luke also, apart from Renegade Media, he also created Renga Media, which a company that made the movie Dominator that I don't know if you ever saw Dominator. Have you ever heard of Dominator, Ryan?
It sounds familiar, but I'm not sure.
So it was an animated movie which was kind of inspired on manga, and it was about this character called Dominator, and he's kind of like the embodiment of rock and roll. And the tagline is, if you say that rock and roll is dead, you will be.
Okay. I take it back. I don't think I've ever heard of that.
It's crazy. It's crazy. It's CGI. It's bad CGI from the early 90s, I think. And I have a DVD of that signed, I think.
Wow.
And Doug Bradley plays the voice of a character. And then I think Danny Filth is also in it. I think he voices another character in there. Ingrid Pitt is also in there. She plays a female character. And yeah, it's really old stuff. I don't think you can even find that anymore anywhere. But anyway, so spine chillers. He had read The Outsider for the first Spine Chiller, which I think you can probably find it. You can buy it, and you can find it somewhere else on YouTube. Maybe I don't know if that's a legal thing, so I'm not going to direct people to it. But I did buy Spine Chillers, and I did have The Outsider, read by Doug Bradley, and he said in the video that he was going to record. He did record the second one, which was going to be the Telltale Heart. But apparently, the guy who was working on editing that, he did a terrible job doing it, so he ended up messing up the project. So it's apparently what Doug Bradley said was that the project was never came out, and they tried the best they could to fix it. And he just said the guy did a terrible job editing it, and he did it in. So he did the project in. And
wow.
So he decided to revive the Telltale Heart reading that he did for that, and he decided to replicate it for his YouTube channel. I think he edited a little bit of the text for dramatic purposes. He said he approached it from a perspective of like adapting something for a script. And then he read it, and it's a 28-minute video. It's a pretty great rendition of the Telltale Heart, which is one of my favorite Poe stories.
Yeah, we'll have to. Everybody should go check that out. Give and follow Doug Bradley's YouTube channel.
Yeah, he's got a lot of little Edgar Allan Poe figurines in the background. He's got a big poster of Edgar Allan Poe.
And I think he's wearing a T-shirt that says Edgar Allan Poe in the video. That's
right. Yeah, and he's got several little figurines. I think one might be a Funko Pop or whatever. And he talks about a little bit about Edgar Allan Poe and how he died, and that he's very adamant and very adamant about making sure people understand he didn't die drunk in the gutter. Stop saying that. And actually, I remember back in 1996, I'm going to say, I think it was 1996, 97, a CD came out with a lot of A-list actors and performers. It was called Closed on Account of Rabies, and it was Poems and Tales of Edgar Allan Poe. And that was kind of like one of my first introductions to actually listening to audio renditions of Edgar Allan Poe's stories. Because at the time I had this big Chancellor edition collected stories and poems of Edgar Allan Poe, illustrated throughout.
I bet you saw The Simpsons The Raven first.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, the first Treehouse of Horror, right?
Yeah.
Eat my shorts.
Yeah, Bart.
Best quote, The Raven. Eat my shorts.
Yeah.
It was read by James Earl Jones, I think.
Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah, I think for a lot of people, that was probably their first introduction to the Raven.
At least, a performance of it.
Oh, yeah. And then, so in 97, this CD came out, and a lot of cool people were reading Edgar Allan Poe stories and poems, like Marion Faithfull. Christopher Walken reads The Raven. He's like, once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered weak and weary. It's really weird, but it works.
What is this called again?
Closed on Account of Rabies.
Okay.
Poems and Tales of Edgar Allan Poe. I think the cover is a Ralph Steadman painting of it looks like a vulture, but I think it's supposed to be a raven. There was Marion Faithfull, Christopher Walken. I think Iggy Pop read The Telltale Heart. So that's a cool one. Yeah, I listened to both. I listened to Doug Bradley reading it, and I listened to the Iggy Pop version of it. I bought the 2 CD edition when it came out in 97. And that's when I found out more about how Edgar Allan Poe died. Apparently, he might have died of rabies, because in 1995, there was an article in the University of Maryland Medical Center. A doctor that worked there, he made a paper about, he was at a convention and he was given like a patient case to diagnose, to make a diagnosis on. And he started reading it, and he was looking through the symptoms of what the guy had, and he noticed, this case doesn't have any radiological evidence or any sort of analysis or anything. And then there was a mention of, a Baltimore museum where the guy had been brought in, and he's like, well, there's no Baltimore museum there. And the doctor said he tried rubbing with alcohol. He's like, that seems like a really old-timey thing to do. And then the initials for the patient were EP. And then he decided that at one point he figured out that, maybe this guy is Edgar Allan Poe.
Oh, wow.
And at the time that he was diagnosing this for this convention conference, he decided that all the symptoms pointed to acute rabies. So he came up with a diagnosis that maybe Edgar Allan Poe, if that was the chart for that patient, he would have died of rabies, which made sense for the fever, the delirium, all the neurological disorder that is rabies.
Weird.
So, yeah, people think that he died drunk.
Bitten by a squirrel or something?
Your guess is as good as mine. I mean, it was like the 1800s, right? Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know how prevalent rabies was. We're talking about before vaccines eradicated a lot of diseases like typhus and stuff. Mm-hmm. And so back then, people could just die of tuberculosis and have horrible diseases take you. So so that's why the CD was called "Closed on Account of Rabies."
Oh, wow!
Yeah,
I wonder where if they rubbed him with alcohol, maybe people thought he was drunk because of that. I think
it was just because it causes a neurological damage to you, so you sound like you're ranting and raving, and maybe you sound slurred, and maybe they thought, that he would, was drunk or something. But it's all part of also his older editor. I forgot the name now, but Edgar Allan Poe had an editor that didn't like him very much. And then he ended up writing a Poe's obituary where he railed a lot about Poe and his character and how he was a drunk. So that's kind of how that myth was also created. I forgot the name. A lot of people out there are probably yelling the name at the podcast right now, but there's a lot of mythology created around Poe, and some of it came from someone who didn't like Poe very much. So... Because most of the rest of the later part of his life, Poe would actually stay away from alcohol because it would make him very ill. So anyway,
make much sense for him to be drunk.
No, yeah, but anyway, yeah. So cool. It's a really awesome video, and go check out Doug Bradley's channel. It's great that he's doing well after his health issues,
And then, so speaking of Doug Bradley, and we had announced this before, but I think we were a little early because when they did that Hellbound screening, then Peter Atkins had announced that he was doing this collaboration with Doug Bradley. Mm-hmm. And so we talked about it. Yeah, this is, Morningstar, the Vampires of Summer audiobook with narration by Doug Bradley, which is what the excerpt that you played earlier.
That's right.
Yeah. So, but now it's not a secret anymore. It's out for sale, and Pete Atkins had been tweeting that you can get a discount if you buy it through Amazon on a certain link. You might want to check his Twitter, ad limey bastard, I think it is. But if you check that, he did some kind of a link where you can save $2.50 if you buy it a certain way versus another way. The audiobook, or if you have a subscription to Audible, you can just get it that way, like you and I did.
Sure, yeah, that's how I did it today. It's great. It came out by this is a tricky name. I don't know if this name isn't working against them, because every time I try to say the name or type the name into Google, I find myself misspelling it. But it's Encyclopocalypse.
Oh yeah. Okay, Encyclopocalypse. Yeah. Yeah,
Encyclopocalypse, which is a company I think created by Mark Miller, right?
Yeah. Right. And they've I think some other former Clive Barker Seraphim employees are staff in that Encyclopocalypse, or not staff, but narrators and stuff.
Encyclopocalypse Publications, and I think that they've had a lot of great authors in their roster of audiobooks. They have Hellraiser's Doug Bradley and The Stand's Mick Garris have signed on for roles in audio adaptation. They have more people. Barbara Crampton will voice Nicolette, a waste management executive in 1980s Manhattan, who moonlights as a serial killer in Our Lady of the Inferno. And, you can go to encyclopocalypse.com. Their tagline is "Making Your Books Heard."
Yeah.
So pretty amazing that they're adapting Peter Atkins now because, you couldn't have picked a better author.
And then previously, Doug Bradley had also narrated Barbie Wilde's The Venus Complex.
That's right. We should incorporate that into an episode at some point.
Yeah, and I have that on my Audible. I just have, and the book is only 6 hours, for the audio version. So
that makes sense.
It's a quick listen or read, but it's definitely worth checking out. And then of course, Mr. Be Gone by Clive Barker. He narrated the audio version of that as well.
And Tonight Again as well, the book of poetry and short stories that came out.
Yeah, and we did an episode about that because we all listened to that early and got to kind of give our reviews of it, and it was really cool. And in that we were pleasantly surprised by the range that Doug Bradley had on that.
Absolutely, yeah. As an author, as an actor, he really brings a lot to his performance, especially in the Telltale Heart video. He moves his voice up a little bit, a couple of octaves, and he's like acting throughout the entire story, and he gets all anxious in certain parts and calmer in others. And it's such a great performance that he delivers on that video. You really got to go check it out. So
this is kind of not as big of a news, I guess. I don't know. I mean, Candyman gets an R rating. Was this a surprise?
No,
I mean,
not at all.
People were relieved and they were worried that it was going to be PG-13, but that never crossed my mind once that it was going to be PG-13. I mean, I think if it was PG-13, that would be the news.
That would be a really big disappointment for me. Yeah, I'll tell you that.
Yeah. So, I mean, good. It's, this is a regular hard R, rated R movie. And there was a little second part of the news of this Candyman news, which is not that, which is also a little weird, but it has a foreign title called "Say My Name." So in some countries, instead of Candyman, it's called "Say My Name." Sure.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, that's normal. That's normal for a lot of movies in other countries to have different titles. Like Nightbreed, for example, is called Cabal in certain countries. Hellraiser itself has, like, in France, it's called The Skinless. In really? Portugal, it's Les Écorchés. I think that's the name for the first or the second Hellraiser. I'm not sure. I think it's the first. In Portugal, Hellraiser is called Damned Fire.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, those aren't bad, though. That's better than Say My Name.
Yeah. Well, Say My Name sounds more like a tagline, I would say.
Yeah, exactly.
I agree with that. That's more of a tagline than a title, but still, Yahya Mateen, he's been doing some interviews, and he did an interview for GQ, Gentleman's Quarterly. So in it, he talks a little bit about, his work with HBO's Watchmen and other movies and projects that he's been in.
I didn't know he was in that Watchmen, but I haven't seen it.
Yeah, I haven't seen HBO's Watchmen either, unfortunately. I've only seen the movie, and I'm really a big fan of the graphic novel, but I haven't seen that, so I can't talk about that. But yeah, he talks a lot about his ideas about acting and his role models. He studied drama at Yale after a short-lived career as an architect. He had some role models growing up like Michael Jordan, Muhammad Ali. Closest thing to a celebrity he looked up was Shaquille O'Neal. And then he talks a little bit about Candyman, right? Yeah. And he also talks a little bit about Black Lives Matter and his feelings about the quarantine and stuff like that, too. Yeah, going outside in West Hollywood and seeing like people protesting for Black Lives Matter, and he was surprised that they're mostly a white, crowd chanting Black Lives Matter. And he said, "I've never seen anything like that." 90% of the crowd was white. I was shocked to see a predominantly white crowd out there saying Black Lives Matter. In that moment, he realized that a movement was really happening. It made me realize that white people see there's something about the conditions Black people live, like me, live under, that are inherently wrong. Protesters had a plan. They had a cause. They were making people uncomfortable, like it's important to.
Yeah.
So he's a 33-year-old actor from New Orleans. And the parts that he talks about Candyman, I particularly like the fact that he talks about it like it's a real character, like it's a real myth, right? Did you catch that part?
Yeah, I did. Like the true story of Candyman.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting.
He says, unlike with Watchmen, Abdul Mateen II had seen the original Candyman starring Tony Todd from 1992 and knew what he was getting himself into. And I quote, "I remember as a child, Candyman was not a character that was based on the movie. The movie was based on Candyman. He was real to me. Watching it back for this role, I got a chance to understand more of the social commentary behind it. I got excited because there was an opportunity to go back to Chicago, Cabrini Green, and ask how it looks like to have the grounds be haunted by someone today." And then he goes on to say, the way I see it, Candyman was born out of the original Candyman, Daniel Robitaille, who was born out of an act of white violence, he says, explaining what interested him most about the script. He was a black painter who, because of his relationship with a white woman, was essentially lynched, and the repercussions of that action lived on for ages and ages. And it sounds almost like he's talking like he thinks it's a real thing, but it's...
yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because it sort of harkens to the idea behind the forbidden in Candyman, that if you believe, or if you believe something enough, then it becomes true or it becomes real.
Urban legends and the way that some stories can start as a story, completely fictional thing, and then become ingrained into the fabric of popular culture to the point where people think it's real. And I think he's kind of doing that here a little bit, probably very deliberately, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But he's talking about this, the original Daniel Robitaille. And it's like, yeah. So for some people, they're probably going to be like, I'm going to Google that name, see what comes up.
Yeah, right. So on this next one, I debated whether putting this on at all, but it's getting blogged and stuff. Like Dread Central did it, and so I figured I don't know. So Hellraiser, there's a rumor that Hellraiser reboot is being delayed, which I believe it is being delayed, but the rumor is because they're waiting to see the results of Clive Barker's lawsuit to retain the rights of Hellraiser. And this guy, had also said that there were new Cenobites was the other part of it. And I didn't watch the video. I'm just, just reading about it from blogs and stuff. But
man, this movie has been delayed for like the last 12 years. That's not freaking news, okay?
Yeah.
And I don't think that the Clive Barker lawsuit,
with everything going on, I mean, of course it's delayed.
Yeah. Of course, it's delayed. Wow. You got some inside sources there, buddy.
Yeah.
No, I think this is clickbait. I think,
right. I mean, it's you can bet that it's going to be delayed, and then you can just make up whatever reasons you want.
Okay, I think this kind of started, or maybe it's being reported by a website called We Got This Covered. And We Got This Covered is basically a really bad clickbait site.
It started with, Mr. X.
Mr. H.
Mr. H, I mean, sorry, Mr.
Yeah.
H. Sorry, Mr. X, whoever you are. But yeah, it started with Mr. H, and We Got This covered it, but also Dread Central did too. Mm-hmm. And some other blogs, and so they're all taking this seriously. That this is the reason, is they're waiting to see the results of the Clive Barker lawsuit, and it seems to me, if they got the movie put out in time, they wouldn't need to, or if they just talked to Clive Barker and say, hey, this is what we're doing. What do you think? Do you want to be a part of it?
I think that this is just Mr. H putting a bunch of things together and pretending like it's all connected. Because, of course, that things are delayed right now. There's no productions happening. Yeah. We got studios are not filming things, or if they're filming, they're starting to film really slowly, and they're bringing back people at a smaller scale to studios and productions. So, yeah, this reboot, it's been something that's been on the table for like 12 years or more. Yeah. Okay. It's had so many different scripts. It's had so many different names attached to it. And then I don't think that the problem here is whether or not, Clive Barker has put a injunction or whatever it was, because that thing, when is that thing expiring? When is that thing supposed to?
Oh my gosh.
Okay. So I found the tweet by Larry Zerner. It says here, interesting note, Barker's termination, if effective, would not take place until December 19, 2021. If the producers can get a new movie out before then, they would be legally in the clear. Just nothing new after that date. So it's not delaying anything.
Yeah, right. They would have plenty of time.
Because they can put out a movie. This movie can be put out until December 19th of 2021, which is more than a year. Yeah. And people can say, well, that's not enough time to make a movie. Isn't it? I don't know. But it's like, I don't think it's delaying anything right now. I think the case for the delays right now is that the studios are not filming anything. Right.
And then if they do have a movie to put out, they can't get it into theaters because the theaters are closed.
Yeah. And there's these weird deals now that AMC and Universal are doing, where they're gonna make a deal basically saying that a 17-day theatrical window agreement, right? Yeah. So Universal and AMC agreed on a multi-year agreement in which films released under the Universal Pictures and Focus Features banners will be exhibited in AMC theaters across the United States with a 17-day theatrical window.
Yeah, basically now, that was to give them 3 weekends, which is like when they make most of their money anyway. And it used to be 90 days. Yeah. So they couldn't put out anything out to streaming or Blu-rays or whatever for 90 days after it got out of the theater.
Right. And now it's just going to be 17 days before they hit premium video on demand platforms like, I guess, Hulu, Netflix and stuff like that. Yeah. Or Apple.
Man, Netflix is really bad now about trying to find movies. It's like every time I try to find a movie for some project, like for one of the projects we're doing, it's never on Netflix anymore. They don't. It's like all they care about is their own stuff that they're making and TV shows.
Yes, and I remember when you used to find a bunch of stuff on Netflix, like from movies to You Bet Your Life with Groucho Marx. I mean, I watched most of that on Netflix like 7 years ago, and now you can only find mostly like just a handful of movies. The bigger movies, and then you have a bunch of like crappier movies, and then the stuff that they make for Netflix.
Yeah, like when we were doing Halloween 3, I'm looking around on streaming to see where I can find it. It's like, oh yeah, of course it's not on Netflix. They don't have anything.
Yeah, but anyway, so 17 days, huh? So after 17 days, basically a little over 2 weeks, they'll be hitting premium video on demand thing.
Well, and that was when previously AMC had said we're banning all Universal Pictures from screening in our movie theaters that aren't open anyway. It's like, come on, you guys.
I know it's ridiculous.
And it seems like this is a really hard turn because 17 days, that really favors Universal. It seems like it's much stronger in their favor than it is to the theaters, who would want those movies as long as possible.
Yeah, and they were trying to make Candyman come out on June, and then they moved it to September, and now it's moved again to October. So what's going to happen? Is this going to be the end of movie theaters?
That it was moved till next year now.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised because, like we've talked about before, I mean, do you want to get yourself in a room with a bunch of people?
Yeah. Well, and now and now if like Candyman is probably finished, shooting, I'm sure, right?
Yeah,
and it may even be finished editing for all we know.
Sure,
So
I would say
all they're
that's a good
doing
chance of that.
is just sitting on it, waiting for a good theatrical window.
Yeah, that's what they're doing with movies like Wonder Woman 1984 and a whole bunch of movies that were going to come out, and all of a sudden, pandemic hit, and it's like, oh shit, we're going to have to close the theaters. And I don't even know, like, there's mom and pop theaters, that weren't like gigantic multiplexes that are going under. And I had art house theaters. I had places in Chandler where I used to live that, there was a cool place there in Phoenix called the Film Bar where I saw like Shin Gojira and a whole bunch of movies and crazy like stuff. And they were like, back in May, they were talking about we might have to close forever because we can't continue to occupy this space without being able to have movies. And then some of these smaller theaters started doing something weird, which is they started making licensing agreements to
to give people like download codes and stuff.
Yeah, to give people like download codes.
I heard that on another podcast. Somebody was talking about that. It was one of those ones that serves alcohol, and so they gave them like they had curbside delivery for the drinks that they paired with the movies or different parts of the movie and stuff, and then they gave them a download code.
Yeah, and they you can buy virtual tickets.
It sounds like a lot of hassle, when you could just rent a movie yourself.
I know, but it's just meant to support these movie theaters until they can bounce back from this. So,
well, if they did that in a way that those downloads or streaming, movie streaming things are exclusive to theaters, that would be a big that would make a big deal for them. That would really help them out.
I know. That would be great. But it's kind of hard to do that when you're a smaller theater. But at least there's places that are coming up with this solution where you can buy virtual tickets and watch documentaries or, still smaller art house films that you can stream through their website instead of having to actually go buy a ticket and go to the actual movie theater.
Yeah.
But
one weird unintended consequence is drive-ins are coming back.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Drive-ins.
Yeah, so you can run your battery down and get stranded in the movie theater.
Well, you're not supposed to have your lights on at a drive-in, but you could turn on your radio, right?
If you have your radio running for 2 hours, then that can run your battery down if the car's turned off.
I know that feeling because I've done that before.
We used to solve that when I was a kid by just bringing a transistor radio and hooking the thing onto the antenna for that instead of the car.
Oh, yeah, of course. That sounds like the obvious solution there. So who knows what's going to happen to movie theaters? And imagine those giant multiplexes in shopping malls.
Yeah.
How are they paying all that rental space?
Yeah.
I'm sure it's being a huge drain on the studios to have these movie theaters sit there empty. When, it's not cheap to rent all that space. I guess maybe some shopping malls are probably giving them some leeway because they're anchors for them, and maybe saying, well, we won't charge you for these months, or we'll give you a lower rent. I don't know what's going on. I don't know anything about that, but I'm just imagining.
And can movie theaters, can movie studios make international versions of movies to play in countries that are kind of done with the pandemic?
Yeah, that's a good point. I haven't looked into that.
New Zealand, I think, that they finished.
Yeah, they had like 20 something active cases of COVID in the whole country.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Let me look that up.
Yeah,
Let's see. New Zealand,
they wouldn't even need to localize them.
Huh. Movie theaters, New Zealand. Let's see. It doesn't say if they're. Oh yeah, they are open. Look at that.
So I wonder what they're showing in those. If they're running old movies, or maybe the studios are putting stuff out in the other parts of the world.
Well, for example, I see that this movie theater in Auckland, New Zealand, is playing right now The Secret Garden, The Tax Collector, Blackwater Abyss, Trolls World Tour. So I'm not sure. I know some of these movies, but some of these movies are kind of old, like The Invisible Man.
And Trolls World Tour is like that first one that made AMC theaters really angry. Right, because that's what Marcus was telling us. That's the one where they decided to just stream it instead of putting it in theaters.
Wait, I stand corrected. Because these movies all have these movies that I just talked about, and I'm looking at the Fandango website for this movie theater in Auckland, New Zealand. Mm-hmm. They all have a blue banner on top that says "At Home." So these are probably being streamed. You can buy the ticket and you stream it at home through Fandango, maybe. I don't know.
Oh, wow.
That's weird, huh?
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't think there's been any kind of distribution, except maybe there might be, if they're open, they might be playing some older movies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. So
I guess other podcasts that deal with cinema more specifically, they will know more about what's going on. I haven't been into a movie theater since before March, so I don't really know.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah.
And we just have one movie theater here, and it's been closed. And honestly, Fairbanks, Alaska, our cases aren't that bad. I mean, they are starting to go up, but it's still it's still like 150. But it's like if they've got no movies to play, it doesn't really matter, if they want to be open or not.
I think eventually movie theaters are going to have to open up, right? And they're going to probably ask you to wear a mask, and they're probably going to have seats that are going to be like, some seats are going to be taken or unusable.
They could just clip them so they're locked in the up position or something.
Yeah. So there's probably going to be something like that. But when that's going to happen, we don't know.
Right.
So,
and the amount of movies that are actually available to screen, I mean, without going into their old catalog, it's going to be kind of small.
Yeah.
Everything that got finished before January.
So we'll see if October is going to be the month of Candyman. Personally, I'm still a little skeptical. I'll believe it when I see it. But I do hope that this movie will come out this year in some way that we can watch it.
Yeah.
I know probably Nia DaCosta, the director, and Jordan Peele, the producer, they definitely want this to come out in theaters, because what producer and director doesn't want his movie to come out in the theaters, right?
Yeah.
Because that's where you're going to make the most money and stuff. But since Trolls World Tour seems to have done really well on demand,
we're definitely not the demographic for that.
Maybe we're in a paradigm change here. I don't know what's going to happen to movie theaters, but the discontent with movie theater experience is not new. It's not something that showed up with the pandemic. A lot of people already had that previous to this. When you go there and people are talking, or phones are ringing, or people are munching their popcorn really loud, or the floor is sticky. And sometimes people at home can have a better experience. You can play it on your big TV and stream it from whatever, and put on your 3D glasses and turn on the 3D function on your TV if you have one, like me. And it's pretty cool. You're just sitting there. You want to pause the movie, you can do that. If you want to go to the bathroom, you can't beat that. That's comfortable.
It is nice. Yeah, and TVs are so big now. It's kind of like being in the theater.
A 4K Ultra HD TV with 3D, and it's how can you beat that?
Of course, if you're in an apartment, then the neighbors are pounding on the floor, going, "Turn that down."
Well, there is something to be said about the cinematic experience. Of course, you go out, you have dinner somewhere, or you go into the movie theater, and you have Dolby Surround or whatever. Mm-hmm. But like I said, I mean, all that stuff is becoming, it's not something that can't be reproduced at home to some extent. Yeah. So
I still haven't made the jump to like 4K TV because of all my old video game consoles. I think that their resolutions won't be supported anymore, and then they'll just they just wouldn't be able to hook them up to the TV.
Well, that's just the nature of planned obsolescence, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, so we'll see if Candyman comes out in October. I I think it's good that they're still putting interviews like this out and talking about the movie, keeping the movie in the general culture. But yeah, it's definitely going to have a different dynamic when it comes out because of all this Black Lives Matter protests that have been going on because of the lockdown with COVID. It's making everybody a little more claustrophobic, I think. Hopefully a little more susceptible to like horror.
Yeah, right. Well, so because we were coming back with a news and topic discussion episode, I put out a message saying, "Hey, does anybody have any topics or feedback or anything for us?" And we did get a few responses. So Jacob Baker said, "Whatever became of the documentary film Raising Hell: The Visions of Clive Barker? Will we ever see it?" And yeah, that's something that just sort of faded away, right? And David Anderson responded. He said they filmed everything and didn't have money to edit it into a documentary. You'd think they would have had a distribution deal, set up enough money for editing before they started. I think there were actually 2 documentary films that are unfinished. That's interesting. I think David might be being a little glib there because it's got to be a little more complicated than, we don't have any money for editing. Guess just give up on the whole thing.
Well, while you were talking about that, I went to see if I could find something about that. And Revelations just says that inspired by an interview with Clive, which he filmed in April 2009 for the Dream the Impossible commercial project, Joe Berlinger embarked on the creation of this documentary and has been accumulating material in recent months, with plans to capture further material at a convention in March 2010. So you can see that the next months was probably 2009. Berlinger's project has continued to progress, and a trailer is now being presented on his site. But then there's absolutely no other information about this in clivebarker.info. And when you look at that, you can see that back in 2013, they were still talking about maybe that documentary would show up in the Sundance Film Festival. But, I don't think that really happened.
Well, and David's the kind of person that would, send tweets to the filmmakers and say, "Hey, what's going on with this?" And so that's probably where he got information like that, I would imagine. But we can ask him. David, where did you get that from?
Well, there was a website, or there used to be a website for Berlinger. Let's see. It used to be called berlinger-sinofsky.com, and there was a section for in production. But the thing is, when you go to that website now, it just opens up Japanese architecture page or whatever.
Oh, wow.
Or maybe this is just the Japanese 404 page not found. It has like an office and everything's written in Japanese. Let me send it to you.
Okay.
While we're looking at this, let me send this to you right now. How do I send this to you through Skype? Boop. Maybe you can read what it says there. There. I don't know if you get it, but when you get it, open it up and tell me what you see.
Okay. I'm trying to. I clicked on the link, but I'm not seeing it opening up on a web browser.
Yeah.
I got to go back in the chat and find it. There we go. Berlinger-Sinofsky.
Yeah, that used to be the website where the trailer was, and now I don't think that even works at all. I think the site is gone.
This is Chinese.
Okay, so it's not Japanese. Yeah. Gotcha. It's not kanji.
Well, it's all kanji.
Well, when I try to translate it with Google, it just says blog news and then view more. And then when I click on that, it just shows like some Asian ladies with like earpieces sitting at a desk in a cubicle, which I'm guessing it's probably saying the website is down.
Yeah. Yeah, kanji, the word kanji means Chinese characters.
Oh, there you go. The more you know. So, yeah, even the guy's website is down. So I don't think you can even see the trailer anymore unless it's on YouTube. Let's see. That would have been called Raising Hell: The Visions of Clive Barker. So, yeah, I guess that project just fell through. I don't think it's ever going to come out. Sorry, Jacob. Yeah. We don't have any news on that.
Well, and then Danny Stewart replied, he said, how about War is Hell, making of Hellraiser 3, Hell on Earth? Like, all right, Danny. we'll talk
I don't know, man. You tell me. You're the one making that.
Yeah, so that's his book.
So cool.
War is Hell, the making of Hellraiser 3, which he has finished his last draft, and he's got it into editing, and he has a publisher. So congratulations, awesome. Danny. We'll be watching out for that when it comes out, and we'll let everybody know when it comes out.
Yeah,
where to get
we'll give it a good review. Absolutely. Yeah. And then Catalina Carita from Little Spark Films says, have you all done any discussions on interviews like Open to Question or Horror Cafe?
Yeah, and I feel bad because when I read this the first time, I misunderstood the question, and I replied, I thought she was asking, have we ever done any discussions or interviews like Open?
Oh, okay.
Interviews like Open to Question or Horror Cafe. It's like, we do. We did that with you guys with the Cenobite Roundtable. Yeah, that was my response. And now I'm reading this. It's discussions on interviews.
I think that's a great point that she brings up. I don't remember. It's been like a few years, so I don't remember. Have we mentioned? If we mentioned them, it was kind of in passing.
We have talked about them in passing. Yeah, I mean, it's like and on this day, Clive Barker said this. We've used them as sources for backing up stuff that we're talking about.
Right, but I mean, some of them are better off you just go on YouTube and watch them because, for example, Horror Cafe is so dense and there's so much stuff. They're just a bunch of writers around a table just coming up with a story for a horror movie. And it's kind of the journey of how they get there. And
it's true. It's tricky, right? Because it would be hard for us to sit around and talk about that when it's better for people to just listen to it.
Yeah, I agree. We could just summarize what the idea is that they come up with, or we could quote some interesting things. But I think it's one of those things where you have to really watch the whole program to really get a satisfying, entertaining experience.
Yeah. Yeah, right. So it's not out of the question. It's just it's tricky to do that in a way where we're actually adding something, to.
And Open to Question, I think we did go through it a little bit. I forgot which episode, but we did comment on the topic was being argued about is horror like a toxic thing or whatever.
Oh, yeah, right.
I think that was the one that they were like, what do you think about these horror movies? Are they damaging people and stuff? And then they're like, I don't think that's true. But I got to go back and rewatch that Open to Question with Clive Barker.
Yeah. I mean, that was a silly premise, and it was really just, the 90s, early 90s version of clickbait.
Yeah, could have been worse. Could have been someone in the audience saying, where did you get your ideas?
Yeah.
And Matt Batten says, I love the podcast. You guys are awesome.
Yeah, thanks, Matt.
You're awesome for listening. So thank you so much.
Appreciate that.
And one last thing here. So Ed Martinez, who's been in several episodes with us, he's actually been in a really cool episode of another podcast, and it's called Decades of Horror. So he was interviewed on that podcast about a zombie film that he worked on called The Dead Pit. I think we might have talked about that with Ed in some of our episodes. Yeah. And so this podcast will also cover Hellbound in a future episode. Hellbound Hellraiser 2. So that's cool. I'm going to listen to that episode when it comes out.
I listened to that yesterday, actually. It was pretty good. It was this podcast. It's called like Decades of Horror : the 80s. Right, so they're going through all these 80s horror movies. And
I think they have different subsections of the podcast. So there's a podcast for the 80s. There's the Decades of Horror for like the 90s. So I think they have several different projects like that.
Yeah, so I listened to that. It was pretty good. There was one girl on there that seemed kind of young, and she didn't ask any questions or talk.
Crystal.
Yeah, and so I kind of wondered if she didn't do her homework, but I don't know.
Uh-huh. I said the same thing to Ed when I was talking to him the other day. I called him. I was like, Crystal didn't say much, but, you know. So apparently they're going to have Ed back for a part 2 where he's going to talk about more projects that he's done.
Did he tell you that? Or because I know that they announced at the end of the episode that their next episode was going to be Hellbound, Hellraiser 2, but they didn't say if he was going to be on it.
Yeah, Ed told me that they invited him for a second part, and then Hellbound is going to be recorded at a later date, but I don't think Ed's going to be in that one. So it's just going to be them talking about Hellbound, which I'll still give it a listen, because why not? It's another podcast talking about Hellraiser. Count me in.
Yeah. Yeah, and I was, being a podcaster, I was interested in how they did it, because it sounded like, the audio quality to me sounded like maybe they recorded a Zoom call, because a lot of podcasters are doing that. All these podcasters that are used to like sitting all together in a room, now
That's right.
Now they don't know what to do, so they switch to just recording Zoom calls, and that has a certain audio quality that you can kind of hear. But he said no, that's not what they did. They actually all recorded together on Discord.
Oh, okay. We should give that a try one of these days. We should do some technical experiments now that we have better computers and more stuff. We should start giving that a try.
Honestly, I hate Skype because it's got weird issues where it will hog up every single resource on your computer just because of bad coding and stuff. But at the same time, there's nothing that has as good of audio quality as Skype does.
It's at least like when I hear you're coming in crystal clear. So we should give that Discord a try though. One of these days, maybe it'll be easier to work with. So, but anyway, so that's, I think, all the stuff that we have for this episode. Coming up next, we will have more news as they come out. There is we were contacted recently by an RPG company, right? You want to talk a little bit about that?
A publisher. And so this person represents this publisher in the U.S. It's the game is called Kult, Divinity Lost. And so our European and British listeners and stuff will know that game. If people who play role-playing games will know that game. But in the U.S., it didn't have a big following because game stores won't put it on the shelves. Because it's kind of mature, and they don't want kids grabbing it and flipping through the pages and stuff, because apparently it's pretty gory to read, to flip through the book. But so we're going to give that. They asked us if we could review it, and I said, well, to me the best way to review it is if we play. So we talked them into hosting a game for us. So we'll all be players, we'll have characters, and we'll do kind of a one shot and see if we can survive through this game. And we could use probably one other player. If there's somebody out there that wants to join us, let us know. That'll be coming up in a couple of weeks, probably. I'm still waiting for. They're sending me a hardcover book, and so I'm still waiting for that to come out. We're going to record it on video, so I can hold the book up and show everybody what it is, and we'll go through the how the mechanics of how the game works, and then we'll just get started playing.
All right, that's going to be something different, but it seems like it'll make for some entertaining. Good times.
Well, and the reason they contacted us is because the world of this cult, they say is pretty well influenced by Clive Barker. So meaning that it's like there's this hidden world, sort of like Matrix or what is Dark City. There's like this hidden world behind the world that we live in, or like that H.P. Lovecraft, story that's From Beyond is based on.
Okay.
Right? Like, so, and most people can't see it, but it's like what happens to you when now you can see it. And so I imagine it's going to be a scary game, and it's going to be like, if you've ever played the H.P. Lovecraft role-playing game, it's once you learn about all this stuff going on in the world, it's kind of hard to survive after that. But so it might be like that, which is kind of perfectly suited for like a one-shot sort of adventure, which is what we'd be doing. So I'm excited about it. I'm looking forward to that. So tune in. We'll put it on audio too, but we'll have it on video so you can see it. And
cool.
Yeah.
You're the Dungeons and Dragons player here. I've never played Dungeons and Dragons myself, but I'm willing to give it a go. And I hope you guys have something fun planned for this weekend. We're recording this on a Saturday. Yeah. So by the time this comes up, we'll probably have already almost gone through our weekend. But are you doing anything fun today, Ryan?
I'm editing this episode. I don't know. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I did last weekend. I did go out and I did find some stuff. I found like a almost pristine DVD of Stephen King and Clive Barker's Quicksilver Highway.
Oh yeah.
So that was fun. I went to a store called Omega Records in Dayton, and I was looking through their DVDs, and I got a sealed Blu-ray of The Fly by David Cronenberg, which was pretty cool. So I watched that last weekend.
Yeah.
And then I also found that Quicksilver Highway, which was in almost brand new condition. It was used, but it was pretty much brand new. So I might go revisit that Quicksilver Highway movie at some point.
Yeah.
And hopefully,
Yeah.
revisit the body politic story.
Yeah, right. And Christopher Lloyd.
Yeah, Christopher Lloyd with the really bad wig and a choker.
Yeah, and the Hand of Glory.
End of glory.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
All right, guys. So stay safe.
We're also, we didn't get through all of the coming next stuff. We're also going to be, in a month or two, we'll be talking about Abarat 3 Absolute Midnight and finishing up our Abarat series. And the A to Z of horror will be doing F is for Flesh and H.R. Giger movies. And I think we're probably going to start with Alien on that one.
That sounds good. Yeah, we can do that. And then we can make a poll for what other Giger-related movies you guys want.
The ones that he specifically worked on.
Okay, so I'll work on that poll.
And we had talked about Future Kill, but honestly, all he did was design the cover of that, so I think that one's out. I think he has to have actually designed elements of things that are in the movie, for us to do a commentary on it. Sure.
There's going to be some interesting stuff because I know that Clive has mentioned some impressions about Giger's work, so we can bring that to the discussion. And,
he wrote a big introduction to
Necronomicon.
Necronomicon,
yeah. I remember seeing that book in a bookstore back in the 90s.
Yeah.
And it was a gigantic hardcover.
Yeah,
it was really
I have it.
All right, so keep your eyes out for that. Maybe this weekend we'll have a poll up on what other Giger movies we can do apart from Alien.
All right, and this podcast having no beginning will have no end. You can find the show notes for this episode and join the discussion over at www.clivebarkercast.com. We've got an archive of past episodes, news, features, and reviews, along with all the ways you can connect with us. You can subscribe on every other place you can find podcasts. Share your thoughts with us and share our podcast with your friends. The Clive Barker Podcast, or BarkerCast, is an independent editorial podcast and news blog that's not affiliated with or under contract by Clive Barker or Seraphim Inc. This is a labor of love by the fans for the fans.
Thanks for listening.